So I think it's very appropriate that this morning we had a demo that I think is really revolutionary, where we see the future of blockchain and where it's going. And I think that it's important to put it within a context of the reality, and that's government and regulators, and the task that they have in terms of balancing trying to support this kind of extraordinary innovation while at the same time having challenges to protect the population, to be concerned about security. So I'm very honored to be able to moderate this panel with these distinguished guests, both the Vice Minister from Mauritius and the Minister from, Minister from Mauritius, the Vice Minister from Lithuania, and Jos, who's a friend and who, from the Chamber of Commerce of Indonesia's point of view, gets to be that interlocutor between business and government, and really in being on the side of industry but trying to help government understand the changes. I think we're also very fortunate because we have representatives of two small nations, of both Lithuania and Mauritius, being the small nations who have a great kind of agility to be able to deal with new technologies, and then somebody who comes from one of the largest nations of the world. And they all have different challenges to face them. So I'd like to actually start off by having each of these individuals introduce their country and where it stands in terms of the regulatory environment for blockchain and for cryptocurrencies. Maybe, Vice Minister, you could begin?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Just good morning in Lithuania for everyone. And it's a great honor to be here to discuss about new opportunities and new challenges in different type of sector through the blockchain. Lithuanian government have very quite clear priority for the innovations and new technologies, and I'm really proud of it. And innovations comes when we're talking not about blockchain or financial technologies. It is important for education, for health, for energy sector, for green investments, everywhere where we are talking about the reforms, changing challenges everywhere. And new technologies is coming daily life for us, for everybody. Small example from our presentation and speech of our minister. And on one time you can be in different places. Today, our minister are preparing presentation for National Parliament about next year budget, and at the same time was together with you to present a message from Lithuania. I would like to believe the next time will be opposite. He has possibility to discuss with you reality and to present next year budget to our Parliament through the technologies. When we're talking financial sector, it's growing very fast, and particularly in Lithuania, we have very good opportunity for cooperation between the different institutions, public institutions, when we're discussing about financial sector and innovations, and when we're discussing with the private market players about financial technologies. And I'm glad to say that Lithuania corporations have very success results. Starting from the beginning, a few years ago, Berkeley established Rice Vilnius Innovation Hub. It was the first hub. Today we have a lot of them, and we are discussing about the CAB Innovation Hub, huge bank, traditional bank. Also, we have a blockchain innovation hub, and next year, Lithuanian bank, central bank, are planning to open the LB chain regulatory and technology sandbox, where all domestic and foreign companies can develop, exchange some experience and test all blockchain technologies in the practice. When we are talking about blockchain, it's not about financial technologies, of course. It comes maybe from this sector, but today we are analyzing different type of possibilities, and in Lithuania in particular, we are working in blockchain in green energy, in the communication, in the health sector, and food industry, and for example, Lithuanian Railway, they analyzing and creating possibility blockchain in traffic regulation platforms. And there's a lot of possibilities for this blockchain technology. I believe that there is a future. It comes from cryptocurrency and ACOs. Lithuanians, open-minded people, very active in this sector also, and we couldn't close the eyes and ignore it. We should proactive, regulatory proactive to react on it and closely cooperate together with different type, very serious institutions like Financial Crime Investigation Office, Tax Inspectorate, other Lithuanian bank, other institutions. We create together, I think, very comprehensive guidelines about ACOs, and they're about regulation. We analyze all regulations, starting from the EU regulation and till the Lithuanian domestic regulations, and provide the guidelines about regulation, taxation, accounting. I think that there is the first practice in the world to try to explain in legal way how to do it. And it is about security. Speed is in the private sector, more or less. Security is in the public sector, if we are talking about speed and security together. These guidelines you can find in English also in Lithuania Ministry of Finance website, where I will be happy if you will be interested. Send for us the questions. It is very important for us for improving these guidelines and use in reality. When we are talking about particular and financial sector innovations, it's not about one country. It is directly linked with the global challenges, global decisions. And it is important today to have very close cooperation, very close agreement now on the decision in global way.
Here we hear from a very cold country that's on the, the cusp of Europe and an entree to Europe. Where does Mauritius fall in this whole area in terms of its regulatory environment for blockchains and for cryptocurrencies?
Thank you. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to be here. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Dharmendar Sesungkur. I'm the Minister of Financial Services and Good Governance. And for those who are not, who do not really know where Mauritius is, it's not very far from the east coast of Africa, around in the middle of the Indian Ocean. But although being a touristic island, we have also a very developed financial center, which is doing extremely well. And we have been probably the #1 investor in India by way of FDI. So it's a well-developed financial center, very vibrant, and in Mauritius, it is good to know that the government is really committed. We are not against innovation and technology. In fact, we have a ministry which is in charge of innovation, and the Prime Minister himself is very committed and forceful in developing the latest technology in blockchain, fintech, AI. So we have the basic regulatory framework in place to start processing application from startups. In fact, I would say we have the regulatory sandbox license, and we have already received approximately 60 applications by startups, and there is a big interest for Mauritius because we are #1 in ease of doing business in Africa. We are also a top leading country in ease of doing business for World Bank. So we have the regulatory sandbox license, which is already taking on board application from startups. The committee has already started its work. We have started analyzing the applications. And as I said, the tone at the top, at the government level, we are very much interested to push in that direction so that Mauritius continues on the path of development and is ahead of the curve in terms of technological advancement, and also provide advanced services in financial services sector to the African continent, of which we are part of it. And the big symbolism today on this stage is that we have a representative from Africa, one from Europe, and also our friend from Asia. So it's reflective of the trend going on in terms of movement of change in the world. So I'll stop here for the time being. I'm sure we'll have opportunity to discuss more later on.
And so, I mean, I think you brought up two really key words in terms of change and momentum. And so smaller countries have that luxury, if you will, of being agile, of being able to have a determination from on top that, yes, we want to become a hub, yes, we want to be welcoming technology. And then we have a large country like Indonesia that will, you know, maybe even look to the experiences of smaller countries. But Jos, tell us where Indonesia is right now in this whole...
Thanks, David. In my view, I think the knowledge, the understanding, and obviously also the adoptions of the technology in Indonesia is at very early stage. It's actually good that Indonesia is in that very early stage. First, as what David mentions, we will have opportunity, and we do have opportunities to look and learn on countries like Lithuania, like Mauritius, on what will be the best approach in terms of the regulatory environment that will take the full advantage of this technology. What is so encouraging with Indonesian situations, David, is that the government, I think, understand the potential of this technology. They started to really want to know about it, and this is why the reason, roughly about 3 or 4 months ago, I asked colleagues who are in the sector to let's form an association, because that will be required for us, the player, to be able to communicate to the government, inform them, share the knowledge, and therefore help them hand in hand, be a real partner to shape up the regulatory that will take the full advantage of the technology. In the meantime, however, I think, and thanks to our government, they do not want to regulate too quickly. We were advised to, you know, play around with the technology, you know, have fun with technology. I'll let you to do what you want to do. As long as you are small enough and does not create friction to the big populations of Indonesia or creating a potential big impact, I'll let you do it. Hopefully, what I'm hoping is that as we progress, as the Indonesian blockchain projects or initiatives that are started by Indonesian progresses, we can learn from countries like Lithuania, like Mauritius, share that information to our government, and therefore able to advise what will be the regulatory environment that will ensure that Indonesia and Indonesians as a whole able to take the full benefit.
Right. So, you know, that partnership between industry and government is so important, and ICOs are obviously a really hot topic because it's provided a new means for young companies to finance themselves without going you know, on a stock exchange or seeking venture capital. So ICOs have been a very exciting kind of development over the past few years. At the same time, I just read in a recent report that at least 80% of all ICOs are scams. So my question is, how do you know, here we have a new means for these startup technology companies to get funded, but we have a means of doing it that sometimes can turn into a scam. From regulators' point of view, how do you balance those? How do you say, okay, you know, here we can put you in a sandbox, we can introduce you to a regulatory environment, we can provide all of these benefits, but we're not going to give you money. You're going to have to go out and get money on your own. And there are these various means of doing it. And for, you know, blockchain companies, the obvious choice is going with an ICO. So how does Mauritius deal with ICOs?
Yes, I would like to talk about how Mauritius is tackling this. In fact, there is a big gap in terms of what the concerns of policymakers are and regulators are, and also the speed with which startups want to move. We have to reconcile the two expectations. So what we've done in Mauritius is that we know that technology, fintech, AI will be driving the next revolution. So we have introduced a regulatory sandbox license, which will basically provide the necessary licenses and necessary approval for startups to start their business. And at the same time, the main regulators, they will be monitoring the situation. And as you said, indeed, there is an element of trust which we need to address, because when we talk about ICOs, we talk about fintech, about startups entering the financial services sector, we have to be very careful, because as policymakers, as government, we need to balance the interests of the nation as opposed to the interests of individuals or stakeholders. It is very important to protect the system. That's why we are proceeding cautiously. We are not against innovation, we're not against technology. We are opening up our market, but at the same time, there might be risk over there. We need to be careful, and our strategy, our approach has been to start with a regulatory sandbox license, because there is no big clarity about what the startup is going to do and what would be the potential risk to the system. So by proceeding in this way, we are careful. We believe that we can manage our risk in a better way, and at the same time allow new startups to emerge, youngsters to endeavor to enterprise, and we are hopeful that Mauritius will be a topmost provider of the platform for new startups to emerge and to develop themselves in this part of the globe. Thank you.
And Lithuania. So Lithuania, here on the one hand, is being, you know, has all of these communities starting up with startups and everything, and then they get to the issue of financing.
Yeah.
And so ICOs are, again, the natural choice. How is Lithuania dealing with ICOs?
Maybe let's start from the digital transformation. When we are talking about digital transformation, not digital is a question. Transformation and process of transformation, there is a question. Changing of our life, changing of our future, and our view to the same thing in different way. There should be enough place for innovation and startups, but at the same time, of course, we understand the risks, and we should create red lines or clear and very simple regulation for the safety, security. We're improving our laws, example, for the money laundering, for the customers protection, for the trust of investors, and this together goes when we are close to the market, when we discuss and we are in line with the technologies. And we should know all new technologies, and I don't think that regulator can be in front of technologies because it kills one another. Innovation first, but regulation should be in line with them.
And where's Indonesia? If I want to do an ICO based in Indonesia, what's the answer?
It's unregulated. So I'd like to take the perspective from the Vice Minister just now. I think it's a very important point. The regulations is always or probably best to be positioned after the innovation. So
not too late, but after.
Not too late, but you know, it cannot be in the front because that will stifle the innovation itself. The innovation, by definition, you don't really able to see what will be the end point, but you need some regulations for the certainty when you are in the sector. So the challenges therefore, and this is what we are encouraging our association member, is to be able to help some kind of like positions and help the government to understand what are actually needed for those players so that they can actually not only survive but also being able to grow and be successful. So far, again, in an unregulated situation like Indonesia, depending on your perspective, it can be good, it can be not so good. I tend to see it more on the positive side, because when we discussed with the government, they said that, look, you do it. If you created a problem, I'll summon you. So I think that's kind of like a message which is probably not too certain, but it allows, you know, the player to have some kind of like confidence that as long as they are also having a good definition or a good goal, a positive end result, not deliberately trying to scam the population, they're not supposed to be afraid. If you are experimenting about a phone call that cannot be stopped, if you are experimenting about a transaction that cannot be stopped by anybody, do it. Eventually, when the government want to, when the government have some concern, they will ask you, you know, you help me how to prevent certain things. And bear in mind, there are a lot more well-intentioned blockchain users than the ill-intentioned blockchain user. That's how I always convince the government. Yes, ill-intentioned people, there's always there, whether in the conventional technology or in the new technology. That one will always be there, but we should not then create rules that will stifle the, you know, the innovation just because we are afraid that this will be used by the very small number of ill-intentioned people.
Right, and so you bring up a general idea that I'd like to explore a little bit more, and that is the partnership between, or the potential partnership between government and particularly blockchain companies. And so government is providing in terms of a sandbox, or in terms of a good legal environment, or in terms of non-regulating. But I think it's important for blockchain industries in particular to look to see what the government needs. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with a technology that has huge potential. We've seen it helpful in areas like land registries in Sweden, in terms of assisting with remittances for those countries that have a large population outside of their borders and coming in. So I think it's important also, while the government's giving this very positive and welcoming sign, to also say what kind of problems that you're facing that maybe this technology could provide a solution to. So, you know, one of those things that comes to mind are the ability of smart contracts to really address issues of corruption, dealing just maybe even at the government procurement level, but being able to trace these things, or being able to address issues of poor construction on infrastructure. When you have a bridge that falls down and then you look back and you find, oh, certain chemicals were missing from the concrete. And these are things that, in fact, this technology can help address. I'd like to hear from you from that point of view of what you think the industry can help you with.
Thank you for this question. During my last 2 days stay in Bali, I had the opportunity of meeting a number of experts in blockchain, and indeed, it is an extremely powerful technology, powerful tool for government to improve efficiency of public services, in addressing public problems, and why not, even in the private sector. So we are aware of this, but we also concerned about the kind of ambiguity, the kind of confusion which, while talking to those experts, I've come across, because there are so many operators, so many startups doing the same thing, and we don't know whether there will be a common platform where all these systems will converge, or will it be a platform for each and every country, each and every ministry. So these are questions that will have to be addressed. Indeed, government are very interested with latest solutions to problems, to complex problems of society, and we would like to use the latest technologies and methodologies to manage to govern in the best possible way our society. I would like to also to react to the subject just before this question. We have to be aware, especially businesses, that the element of certainty is critical in any business initiative. If there is no certainty, there will be a kind of reluctance for the capital market, for investors to invest in projects. So in Mauritius, we have identified that problem, and we have ensured that whoever embark on a new project, on a startup, should have the guarantee, once they have this regulatory sandbox license, they are guaranteed that the project will not be stopped, and they have the liberty of taking the project till the end. So that's the certainty element which we are guaranteeing. We do not want that some startups to come in Mauritius, start something, and then at the middle of the road, they are stopped by government people saying that this is not allowed, or the law doesn't allow this and that. So we are providing certainty to the startups. So this is how we are proceeding.
Very good. And how does Lithuania, what can we do for you?
I think that blockchain technologies can change everything in the public sector in particular, because you can imagine how quickly can be all services in public sector when we are talking on health sector, for example, and how can be efficiency. And Zach exacted presentation, it shows that bad news for For example, global operators, it is huge competition, but at another side, it is a huge possibility to improve, to be close each other, and to be much more quickly. When we are talking about public procurement, about railway monitoring traffic, about everything in the public sector also, and work together, we can find the best solutions also. And there is one way for the future. I think it's not very far future. It is for today.
Right. And so with Indonesia, I mean, after all, PundiX really began here, and motivated by a new demographic that we identify as the unbanked. Correct. That there are around 10, maybe 20% of Indonesians have any kind of relationship with a bank, including a bank account or credit cards. Yeah. And so the motivation behind PundiX initially was to extend financial services, even at the most basic level, to the masses. Yeah. What else do you see?
Yeah, I think a very good point there, David. I and colleagues in the association position ourselves to try to have an implementation of the technology that is useful and it can also be easily digested. The PundiX Expose is one of a very good example. It's easily be digested in terms of its use. It's also demystify that the technology is only related to cryptocurrency, which is used for speculative activities, which are rampant to scam, etc., etc. So we are encouraging, and I think the right position for Indonesian player is try to have an implementation that is useful, whether that's financial inclusivity, whether that's in terms of land registry, whether that's in implementations in terms of the social security system, which will make the government also more willing to actually to support, because they can also see that not only it is beneficial for the people in general, but it's also needed by the country. And as much as so far the member of the associations feels okay being a player in an unregulated sector, we would love to have, hopefully very soon, some kind of certainty. But it's also then the challenge for the member of the association to be able not just to say, no, I don't like it after the government issued the regulations, but also to be able to present and to be able to explain what is actually needed before the regulation is actually being finalized.
Right. Just a short add, when I mentioned that innovation is first priority in Lithuania, and what your question was about blockchain, private sector can help us. I think together we can reach much more results. We have excellent IT infrastructure, regulations, environment, tax holidays for innovation in Lithuania, talent pool, everything together can create a boom in this sector. And now we are just have a new brand of Lithuania, Litechnia. All technologies in everywhere, every sectors. Yeah.
Well, I think every nation wants to fill that role, and to be the magnet for this kind of innovation. And I think every nation is struggling with how to balance these things, and it's I think really important. And I very much appreciate your sharing sort of the regulator's view and that kind of in-between place between regulator and industry. So thank you very much.
And thank you so much to all the speakers.